Welcome, everyone. Very excited to be here today with two amazing executives to talk about modernizing enterprises in AI with AI. AI has taken the world by storm, and here are two people who can actually tell us what is going on in the real world at the practical level. So let's start with some introductions. Manish, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your work with AI?
Sure. Very excited to be here, Shmeet. Nice to meet you and Sumit, and looking forward to exchanging ideas. In terms of my background, I'm an engineer by training. I then went over to the dark side and was in consulting for a number of years. Had a couple of different operating roles, and for the last 5 years, have been in private equity. And so it's a personal passion project of mine, and so I've spent a bunch of time working with different companies on their AI initiatives.
Thank you. Thank you, Manish. Sumit, please tell us a little bit about yourself and your work with the Bain Capital.
And thank you for having me here, and very excited to meet you and Manish as well. A little bit about myself. I'm an operating partner focused specifically on AI transformation at Bain Capital Private Equity. Prior to this, I spent many years at JP Morgan Chase building enterprise AI ML platforms for both the B2C side of the house as well as B2B. About a decade at Google prior to that, in a variety of product commercial roles, and spent several years at Google Assistant, which was kind of the early consumer foray into consumer AI, and then early career in tech strategy, a few years in venture as well. So um, very excited to have a wide ranging conversation here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sumit. Thank you, Manish. And for those of you who are not familiar, I'm Ashmeet Sedana. I run Engineering Capital, a venture capital firm based here in Silicon Valley, where we specialize being the first investor in software companies taking technical risks, solving hard problems in software. And I was the first investor in Nexla. Other than that, I don't think we have any affiliation with the company. So we can all speak from an unbiased perspective. Um, Now, AI has had an enormous impact already, and I think will continue to have an impact in terms of how it is going to modernize how enterprises run. Obviously, enterprises run without AI today. And so let's look at different sectors: manufacturing, healthcare, financial services. How can AI help us improve outcomes, improve efficiency, and future proof our companies? So let's start with perhaps just diving in with both of you, whoever wants to take this first. What are some exciting or surprising ways in which you have seen AI modernize a traditional business already? Who wants to take that first?
Sumit, you want to go first?
Sure, happy to. So, we'll keep it open. So, I think Ashmeet, your question gets to the heart of two things. So, when you think about traditional businesses, and when I say traditional, right, of course, non-tech first businesses, but today my view is every business is a technology business. Every function in any large scale, medium to large scale business or even startups is enabled by technology. So the use cases that we have seen. So I'll take the financial services example, and then of course from a private equity lens, healthcare, financial services, consumer, you name the vertical, you're seeing applications of AI all the way on the front end in terms of customer and go to market and better pricing and thinking through personalization and use cases in marketing and copy generation, etc. But also customer support, software development. So all those use cases that everybody talks about, we've all seen the media headlines. They're becoming real. One of the surprising areas that you asked about that I've been very positively surprised by it is GovTech. So you don't think of public administrations and departments and fire departments, etc., being kind of at the forefront of technology. Uh, but I was recently at a conference and had a chance to meet many of the administrators of many public departments and some of these agencies. And it's incredible how forward leaning they are into some of these technologies. So, I'm sure Manish has seen many examples as well. But that was one area that I was very positively surprised by, the kind of AI hunger and AI traction and just AI awareness of what it could do.
Yeah. No, that resonates, and it's just one point I'll add is what I am personally most excited about is the opportunity in so-called traditional industries. I think these industries are sitting on a bunch of data. Often the talent doesn't exist. They don't have a modern tech stack. And I believe with AI, the barrier to doing a lot of this work has come down drastically. Just to give you a couple of fun examples, right? And I agree with all the pieces that Sumit mentioned. Conversational AI is a big piece, right? So you're a services business. Customer calls your call center. You often are not staffed adequately. They want to set up an appointment. You have abandoned calls. Well, now you can just have an AI agent answer those calls, which you would have missed previously, and actually schedule those appointments for you. Simple revenue generating opportunity, pretty low risk. And again, you're just scratching the surface. Take another field services business. A customer calls and says, well, a part is broken. I need a new part. In most businesses I've worked in, the ability to predict which actual part the customer wants is pretty limited. It's 50 to 60%. Now, if you can just move your batting average up from 50% to 60 or 70 or 80%, it's a game changer for the business. What I like about this use case is a couple of things. One is a lot of the data is actually sitting in customer manuals, which now with LLMs and everything you can actually extract. That's one. Second, there is actually very low risk of hallucinations. I don't want to get 100%. As long as I can increase my batting average from 50 to 60 or 70, it's a real game changer. So again, those are just two pretty simple examples. And as Sumit mentioned, there are a bunch more. But to me, what's most refreshing is the opportunity in traditional industries with the incumbents, where I think the sky is literally the limit.
Thank you. I love those examples because they instantly make it clear that the use of AI is not about replacing people, which tends to be the popular media narrative in terms of AI is going to take over the world and nobody's going to have a job anymore. But it's really about enabling these new use cases, some of the nice examples that you've given over here. And so I love those. Taking the flip side, are there areas where AI is going to take longer, where we are still few years away from where AI starts having an impact? Is there something like this? Or should we just say that everything is going to be taken over and helped by AI?
So I have two observations on that question, Ashmeet. One, what the narrative around AI taking over, I feel is a bit of a false narrative because I fundamentally believe this it is an enabling technology. So to all the examples Manish shared as well, in many of the use cases and many of the companies that I'm having conversations with, the real question is how do we get the human workforce upskilled, uptrained, familiar with some of these technologies, because they're the folks on the front lines are the real is where the real insights are on what can be automated, right? Of course, top down you can identify a few use cases. There is companies and industries being set up on specific areas like customer support, automation, etc. But there is a very long tail of use cases that can drive efficiencies inside companies, that can drive new growth, new products, and those opportunities really come from the front line. So you know I have an issue with when the media narrative is AI is going to take over, because I view it as an unlock. And I think partnering with those folks and generating a new set of ideas, where can companies drive growth, efficiencies, new market, new products, I think is going to take time. It's going to be a continuous evolution, continuous journey, and that's the part that I'm frankly most excited about.
Yeah, just building on that for what it's worth, right? I Similar to Sumit, I think of it in terms of what types of use cases will be enabled and when. So I think we are in the early innings of what I'll call more retrieval use cases. Hey, the knowledge exists. Tell me where it is. Summarize it for me, right? Like those are a bunch of the examples that I gave you. I think we are in the first innings of that piece, even that just simple knowledge retrieval, right? I think the use cases which are further out are of two types. One is there is more judgment required, where the question of did you get it right or wrong is not as easy. I think clearly deep research is there. There's a bunch of stuff happening, but I think those are tougher. I think we'll get there, but those are tougher. And I think the second angle to think about is what's the um, what's the minimum quality that I need, right? Am I looking for 100% accuracy? And those are tougher. I think what I'm more excited about, again, in the short term, there's a long runway of you don't need to be 100% accurate. I just need to be a bit better than where I am today. So that's how I would think about it. But I really think we're in the first innings here.
Yeah. The other thing I would add, Ashmeet, on this is to your question of what kinds of use cases will take longer. We are seeing, as example, applications in kind of the industrial space, right? There are very exciting early explorations that some of the companies are involved in that I've met. Uh, Obviously, in the space of robotics, but even beyond that, just take field training as an example. There's lots of examples where field service technicians go out to repair, different kind of critical devices in industrial companies or medical companies, etc. And today, the modality is you go out there, you have some experience, maybe you access some knowledge, and to Manisha's point, you can do smart retrieval and get the most relevant knowledge. But there are experiments ongoing with personalized, virtual, augmented walkthroughs based on the decades of knowledge that some of these companies and the data that the companies are sitting on. To get those, to happen at scale will take a few years, but once they happen, they will be game changers. They will, completely transform the way some of these companies deliver service. So again, there's many applications in that intersection of physical um, field workforces that are out there on the front lines and actually using some of these technologies in the field. I think those use cases will be exciting, but will take longer.
So I was just curious, what are you seeing in tech? You spend a bunch of time in deep tech. What are some of the use cases you feel are close and further out?
Yeah, from the tech perspective, it's very obvious that there are, some use cases that have emerged that have already taken off. For example, code development itself. Every aspect, it's ironic that AI is having an immediate and massive impact on the development of software itself. So it's not just the tools like Cursor, it's also, for example, a portfolio company of mine, CodeRabbit, where code reviews are being automated using AI. And so the efficiency of programmers is going to go up dramatically. And just speaking for myself, I can tell you that immediate question then people ask me is, well, does that mean that we shouldn't be teaching our children programming, or in 10 years from now, will we not need programmers? And I believe the exact opposite. Every single one of my companies is still trying to hire programmers, would hire as many good programmers as they could. And so software development is clearly one of those use cases. Another interesting but surprising one, especially Manish, given the fact that you brought up that there is this issue of hallucination, lack of predictability that comes up with AI, has been in the legal use case. So Harvey took off as a company in terms of contract review, in terms of assisting lawyers in development of legal work, and that is clearly another use case. And so we can see more examples like this where there are early use cases where AI is going to have a dramatic impact beyond the simple prediction, the simple machine learning use cases, which were like fraud analytics or ad prediction or things like that, where AI was initially developed.
Yeah, that's helpful. That resonates.
Well, thank you for bringing me into that conversation. I mean, I spent all my time sort of, at the very, very early stages, which is also why I'm so proud of the investment in Nextla. I was the first investor. They've done an amazing job of building this data platform that enables companies to, in this case, use it for AI. It could be for something else, but obviously AI is the most obvious use case at an infrastructure level. But I want to get practical over here. We've laid out the potential for AI and some of the use cases. And I'm going to come to you, Sumit, with a question over there. Now, you've helped scale these AI platforms. These AI platforms are not easy to build. Fortune 5, Fortune 10, Fortune 50 companies obviously set the bar for how these platforms get built. What are some lessons that other companies can take from your hard work in scaling these platforms? What can we learn from that?
It's a great question, Manish. And, look, certainly I've had the opportunity to be involved in some of those efforts. But, I will also say that some of the companies like JP Morgan, et cetera, have been investing in AI and data platforms for decades, right? Uh, they're, as just to take JP Morgan as an example, they've been at the forefront of modernizing customer experiences, banking experiences, and sort of migrating to the cloud and going through some of those journeys for well over 15 years, right? Now, that being said, given the size and scale of some of these companies, there is significant complexity in those environments still. So, as an example, you could have probably 200 plus ways you could open an account through a financial company of that size and scale and global, which means there is always the risk of not having a single view of the customer. You could have data sitting around in different parts of the organization. So one of the biggest challenges was, is, and I feel will continue for some time, is how do you corral the data ecosystem? How do you have single source of truth about not just what, just to take an example of what the customer profile is, but what the latest view is of customers' transactions, what we know about the customer, how we can help them, what financial journeys are they on, as an example. Now, the companies that do get it right are able to unlock massive value in launching use cases which are around personalized products, personalized pricing, just better customer experiences by giving the front lines the context when they're engaging with the customer, no matter what the channel. But that journey, on the front end sounds great, but all the integrations that are required at the back end in terms of the data, the infrastructure, frankly, even multiple teams that are trying to target similar use cases, sometimes that leads to, it's just a real challenge in massive companies. So I would say the hard work that is required to get to those fantastic experiences that customers have goes all the way across the stack, right? All the way from policies, and do you even have consistent KYC policies across? I'm just sticking with the financial services example, across the different lines of business that you have, and often that is not the case. So you may have a completely different experience depending on whether you open a credit card or a banking account or a wealth management account. So I think there is significant opportunities in working through the change management aspects, all the way from the data layer to the infrastructure to what models do you build, how do you test, what use cases you're going after, and then actually offering them to customers and testing whether they're offering real value, and then iterating from there.
This is the Data and Integration Summit, and it's interesting. So much of what you talked about, it really does come down to data. And I'm reminded of an old name for all of IT, computer science, software that we used to talk about, which was simply data processing. It really is about data processing at the end of the day, in terms of what you do. And it sounds simple, but it is very difficult to get it right. I want to switch to, ultimately we do all this hard work to get some output, to get an impact. And perhaps a question for both of you, and I'll come to you, Manish, first. If you could give an example of where you have seen a measurable impact, what sort of an impact was it? How did you measure it? Maybe what were some challenges that came in with that impact? I'm curious if you can share some of that with us.
Yeah, there are a few examples. If I just build off the prior two examples I gave, right? So on conversational AI, the abandoned calls going down and the bookings increasing. So that's definitely one. Um, you mentioned developer productivity. That's been a second one. Now, measuring developer productivity is actually hard because it gets complicated, but we've tried to come up with some measures around number of features developed, et cetera, et cetera. So we've done that. Um, the third is in some companies that have complex workflows, trying to say how do we automate specific parts of a workflow, and is an individual or a human now spending time on the higher value add tasks, right? So those are like three or four examples that we worked with. Um, the other thing that we really try to focus on a lot is just the quality aspect of it, right? So there's the efficiency and the effectiveness, and at least the thing I try and always reinforce is I'm mostly concerned about the effectiveness and the quality aspect of what we are delivering, and then the efficiency will take care of itself. So those are just a few of the metrics that we've seen work.
Wonderful. Thank you, Manish. So it's real, you get measurable impact, you actually reduce the number of the waiting time or the calls that get dropped or don't get answered, is such a great example and so tangible, which improves the customer experience, of course, immediately with the use of AI. Sumit, I want to switch to you and see if you have any examples of some measurable impact that you can share with our viewers here.
Yeah, so I think very similar. I'll take the customer service example. So there's multiple situations where, I'll take one B2C example and one B2B example. In the B2C case, if you think about the customer service experience, right, it is typically large call volumes, and um, you have long hold times. You just are not staffed enough, or if there's an issue that happens, there's a spike in volumes. All of those things lead to terrible customer experience, right? We've all gone through that IVR, old IVR, of like press zero, talk to an agent. And there are very tangible examples where two things are happening. Of course, we're measuring leading indicators and KPIs, but also outcomes in terms of customer satisfaction and actual customer. But when you deploy, voice agents at the front end to actually try and triage the customer challenge, there's already platforms out there and companies out there that many of us have experienced where you're seeing significant deflections. So what percentage of the calls that would have otherwise landed with a human agent are easily solved? Now that is easier. So the kinds of improvements we've seen on the B2C use cases are actually pretty phenomenal, and we've seen that in companies. Because sometimes the use cases, there's always three or four top use cases that drive a significant portion of the call volume: password resets, lost my card, etc. In the B2B scenario, the challenge is a little bit harder because usually the support operations are more sort of a troubleshooting nature. So there are more complex workflows to understand the challenges, to understand the customer's environment, and really help the customer navigate whatever issue they're facing. Even there, we are seeing significant improvements with things like knowledge retrievals, and the metrics that we're tracking, of course, are certain percentage of deflections, ultimate customer satisfaction, but things like mean time to resolution via AI, and just frankly even field agent satisfaction.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sumit. I love those examples, and especially the way you laid it out in terms of both the B2B and the B2B and the B2C side, where we can see an impact for this. So I want to switch gears after having looked at the potential for AI, where all the capabilities that AI has, to perhaps what are some of the misconceptions people have for AI. What are some of the mistakes people make when when they think of actually implementing AI? Sumit, I'll come to you first.
Yeah, and I think it's a Ashmeet, an excellent question, because one of the biggest challenges, to be honest, is what we talked about a little bit earlier: the headlines. Right, the misconception is that you read all these media headlines and it's a plug and play sort of solution to deploy a platform, and by next week you should get the efficiencies and gains. It is, more than anything, this is a change management journey. So we talked about this all the way from how do you do responsible AI to how do you involve the your front lines, how do you change behavior and processes. I mean, one way I like to think about it: if you are going to take your existing business process for any workflow, whether it's customer support or go to market or software development, and just deploy an AI tool, you'll probably get some efficiency in pockets, but you're unlikely to get the end-to-end headline grabbing efficiency or growth that you're really looking for, and that that 10x unlock. And you have to really take a step back and reimagine what that process could look like and what it should look like. So again, we've all heard the software development example where you can wipe code your way to a pretty robust application very quickly, or do rapid prototyping. What does that mean for software development teams, and how do you upgrade their talent, their processes? So one of the biggest misconceptions, coming back to your question, is that, hey, let's just buy a bunch of licenses on these tools and platforms that are emerging, and off you go, and you'll get some productivity, but you have to do the hard work of going through the change management journey to really bend the curve on your company's growth trajectory.
It's still a hard journey. It's still an enterprise. It still has to go through all of the work that is necessary. So it's not a magic wand that you can just wave and it will magically implement itself. That's the reality. That's why it is hard work and it does take an effort to do it. We've been talking about some of the misconceptions in AI. What are some of the mistakes people make when they think about it? So Manish, would love to get your perspective on that.
I think the biggest misconception, Ashmeet, is that this does not apply to me.
Oh,
It isn't coming from me. I'm in a protected industry and it doesn't apply to me. So I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. Um, it's funny when I look at it over the last 24 months. I think I feel like the urgency and pace of this has only accelerated. And CEOs and management teams, which even 6 months ago would have said, you know what, this doesn't apply to me, are really rethinking it. And a bunch of people have gone from, I don't see it to, am I too late already? Right. And so that's, I think, the biggest misconception, and having that conviction and the belief that we need to go after it. And my message to anybody here would be, no matter which industry you're in, this is coming from you for you. And the faster you can get on board, the better it'll be.
it's really nice how you phrase that, Manish. My version of that is, who have you laid off, recently because of AI? Is the way I like to ask that question in a provocative way. And the reality is, the answers are actually none. Very rarely have I met someone who's actually been able to do it. On the flip side, who thinks they're going to get laid off because of AI also, tends to elicit a response of like, yeah, but my job is a little different. It's a little more complicated. It works a little bit differently. And so this really takes us to the highest level where these decisions get made at the C suite in an organization where you are setting strategy and thinking about it. How do you get C suite alignment for AI? How do you build it? How should a company think about modernizing itself with AI at the C suite level? I'll start with you, Manish.
Yes, I think this is a critical thing, Ashmeet. I would say this is the number one most important factor. Um, I work with a number of mid-market businesses, right? Mid-sized businesses, so not large enterprise, but mid-sized businesses. And in those businesses, it starts with the CEO. These are typically healthy, fast-growing businesses that are doing well. There's a bunch of stuff that's always going on in these companies, and getting the CEO behind it and having him or her really be the champion, I think is step number one. I think step number two is then getting the executive team aligned. And what I try and emphasize a lot is this two in a box concept, that anything you are doing really has to have both an operations owner and a tech owner. Because to reinvent the businesses, some of the use cases we've talked about, this is much about process reengineering. You can call it AI or not, but it's about process reengineering, it's about change management, it's about the tech. And so we've really tried to emphasize you need to have this two in a box concept, both people working well. The third thing that we try and do then are real, these take some dollars, right? And what else is coming off the plate? And so one of my biggest thing that I try and do is, or my biggest contributions is, people come up with 30 ideas and I try and kill 27 of them, right? And really say, okay, what are the two or three things that really matter? For those, are we resourcing it correctly? Do we have alignment? And are we going after it? And then the last step, really, and this is again quite important, is technical talent. That's part of why I'm interested in Nextla. Partly is, too often you've got too many people talking about it and not actually doing it. So in my mind, marrying the right technical talent with the business owner and that two in a box concept, that's quite critical, right? And we've had situations where you get on a call and the tech person says, well, the asks were not clear, and the other person is saying, well, it's not driving. I mean, we've just stopped that. Like, every presentation has to be a joint presentation. So anyway, those are a few of the things that tricks of the trade that we try to do. But Sumit, would love to hear what you're seeing, and what is how you guys are doing this.
So I 100% agree with everything you've laid out, and the only two things I would add that I've seen work very well, as well, in addition to everything you mentioned. One is sort of creating truly helping them understand, or creating a burning platform, right? So the burning platform for the executive teams to act can either be in the form of, hey, is there a competitive threat that they're not even seeing that's coming around the corner? So is there a Gen AI native business model that will emerge that may not completely disrupt you, but may put significant pricing pressure? So just helping them, the executive teams look around the corner. of what's not possible in the next 6 months, a year, but what about 2 years from now, 3 years from now? So taking that long view, I think, can help them really reimagine both the opportunity as well as the risks. And the second thing that I've seen, sometimes be effective is just helping them imagine the art of the possible. Just like you, we work with mid-sized companies that are not exposed to the latest and greatest in AI every single day, and sometimes just seeing demos and immersion days, and having them really exposed to what the possibilities are really creates an unlock and help them reimagine how they can run their businesses differently, or new products that they could create given the data they're sitting on, etc. So those are the only two things I would add.
Wonderful. Thank you, Sumit. Thank you, Manish. You both kind of touched on this already, but I want to end with really a discussion about people, which is ironic because we're talking about AI and we're talking about modernizing enterprises, but it really does come down to people at the end of the day, and it comes down to talent. And so the question for me is, at the lowest level, data engineers, chief data officers, how do they evolve? How do they grow? What are the talent needs for this AI transformation that is taking place? And how do you advise both your friends, colleagues, and also your employees in terms of how they should think about themselves as AI pervades all of these enterprises?
Yeah, I could maybe start with some thoughts, and I mean, this is the single biggest challenge we run into. So I'm not sure we've solved it by any stretch of imagination. And I'll again, the lens I'll bring is I typically work with mid-sized companies in more, we do some software services, but all kinds of industries, right? So there are a few things. One is just being open to change. We are all learning, and so to Sumit's point earlier of being aware of the ecosystem, I think that's quite important. Um, I think the second thing is we've been quite open to external help, right? So more than we typically would, because some of these things are specialized, they're new. I think that's important. Um, and I think what we are trying to do is build more of a evaluation function, because I think evaluating who will be good in this and not is actually quite hard. And this gets to my earlier point on the technical skills, right? As we've tried to think of people, we have overemphasized, or I have overemphasized the technical skills, because I think a lot of the other business judgment that I can provide, as long as the individual is open to it, right? So you don't want somebody from ops who says it won't work. But the approach we followed is, let's try and get the ops people open to the possibility, open their mind to what's possible, and in parallel, let's try and hire the best technical talent. They don't need to have years and years of experience. In fact, I prefer it if they don't have years and years of experience. Give somebody a step up role, and that's what we try to do. So anyway, but that's those are a few thoughts. Again, it's an unsolved problem. So if either of you have any suggestions or thoughts of what you've seen, that would be quite helpful to me.
Yeah, I don't think there are any silver bullets, even in the age of AI. So it's interesting that we've sort of come full circle in terms of recognizing the need for the people, some of the skills, and how to be effective with them. Sumit, you want to share some thoughts about how we should think about talent, and from a data perspective, how data engineers should think about it?
Yeah, I'll take that view. So there is clearly, some of those things that Manish mentioned. So, of course, we're engaging with external companies as well to help some of the companies in our portfolio. That being said, as I think about the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and as I think about, frankly, what my kids will learn as well, that openness to change that Manish brought up, I think, is the single openness to change and learning. The continuous learning is the single most, I think, trait that will separate the people who ride this wave or who get left behind. Now, that learning can come in many. It can be on the job learning. It can be trying out projects on the side. I mean, these tools are completely democratizing how you learn about things, right? You can use ChatGPT as a tool to, get a master's in any topic that you want today. So what I encourage sort of my teams as well as our companies is to facilitate access to some of these tools and leverage them to kind of be AI first in their thinking. So there was a fantastic memo that's been going around by Shopify CEO, which is about reflexive AI. How do you really incorporate that in your daily? So if you find yourself repeating anything again and again, pause and think about how you could use any one of these tools out there to actually create a workflow around it, create an agent around it, or just try to use an AI tool to see if you can automate that. And I think people who do that proactively will just get a just using compounding will get better and better and better, and frankly will be change agents inside some of these companies. So I have actually been positively surprised by some of the younger talent in the companies we have, who've come up with ideas that top down we wouldn't have thought of. And these are the people who've been trying and playing around with some of these tools. So I want to find ways to encourage that and give them access to those resources.
I will say, just to add to that on this topic of learning. Look, I've been working for a long time now. This is the first time where I literally feel like each week I'm struggling to catch up. And if I'm not doing something for a couple of weeks, I'm outdated. And there is more and more stuff I don't know about. So my paranoia about myself is at a level that it has never been before. Um, and so I would just encourage folks to have a bit of paranoia around this. At least that works for me. But I personally found it quite challenging to just keep abreast with the latest. It's just so fast and so much.
Yeah, I'm not sure I want to use the word paranoia, though that is certainly a word that gets you excited and energized to go make something happen when you start thinking about it that way. But I love the fact, Sumit, that you brought up the Shopify memo, which, for those of you who are not familiar, is really about taking Shopify, which itself is a great company, and embracing AI in every aspect of how that company is going to run and be built. And the example I'd like to leave people with is really thinking about electricity. If you were to start a company today or run any company today, it would be inconceivable for you to say that I'm not going to use electricity. Why would you do that? It would be absurd. It is obviously such an efficient and effective way of using energy. So 100 years ago, of course, that was a revolutionary technology that people would use. And I think AI is just like that. Today it would be inconceivable to try to do anything new, whether you are modernizing an existing enterprise, whether you're starting a new company, whether you're thinking about how you're going to do something differently, and to not use AI in it. Why would you not do that? You should use it. It is such an effective and powerful technology that you can make happen as long as you have the data to underpin, which is, of course, what powers AI, which enables that to happen. I want to thank my esteemed colleagues here, Sumit, Manish. This has been incredibly insightful. I know you are both very busy people, and I appreciate the time and effort that you took to share these learnings with us. Thank you.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.